hello, good afternoon. Jane, while people are joining us, what would be brilliant is could you do a little potted history, because you're now the Director of Fundraising at Thames Hospice. I've known you for years since you joined there. But what's your kind of career arc that means that I'm talking to you about major donor fundraising today?
Okay, so I did not set out to be a major donor fundraiser. I don't know if many people in my position really do that. I don't know, but I've kind of fallen into it as I've gone. So I won't go back too far. So I was born and raised in Australia. You may hear from my dulcet tones occasionally, but I've been over here for a long time now, so coming up 20 years. So when I first came over here, I always wanted to go into HR. That was my background. That's what I wanted to do, but I wasn't CIPD qualified, so I found some other things to do. So I worked in membership organisations for quite a while, so not-for-profits, and then I moved into Chatham House, which is an international affairs think tank, and I was running the membership department there, and part of their offering was an annual gift, like an annual giving opportunity, and nobody was really running with it, so I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. So the first year that I was there, we raised 15,000, and with my sort of fundraisery hat on, I went, well, how do we make this project more interesting? She went out and asked questions about what people wanted to fundraise for, and then we turned it into what you now know as an individual giving campaign, and after 4 years we were raising 150,000.
Nice.
We did the right thing at the right time for the right people. So we talked about a digital library. At the same time, I was running a web membership offering. So we did lots of digital stuff. So we kind of did it hand in hand. So I was there for 4 years, did that, and then moved to the University of Reading, where I worked managing project type activities for students in the property sector, but also very much on the fundraising side. So we had a project called Pathways to Property, where we were trying to raise awareness about the property industry to people that weren't traditionally from background that would go into it, and going out to schools around London and beyond in areas of high deprivation or free school meals, or maybe you were your first in your family to go to university, and encourage people to think about university. So we did summer schools, mentoring, all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of where I started in my corporate fundraising side of things. But then on the side of that, we also had individuals that were fundraising for us. So part of my work was to go out to people who were alumni of University of Reading in the property industry and ask them to become pioneers, which was £1,000 a year. So twice a week, I would go into London, I would have my 3 or 4 coffees set up with my individuals, and I would wander around London, go into coffee shops and meet people and ask them for £1,000. That's kind of where I got my grounding for major gifts fundraising from. From there, I then came here, just thinking where I went next. I had maternity leave in the middle of that. And when I came back from maternity leave, I was actually working for a different part of Reading University, which was Henley Business School, again, going out to alumni, asking them for different things. So I sort of built up my major gifts and corporate fundraising on that front. And then I saw an opportunity come up for Thames Hospice. It's right around the corner from where I live. It's in my own community. And I'll be honest, the first time it was offered, I didn't even apply for it because I thought, I don't think I'm set for that. I'll get someone else to do that. And then it came around again, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a go. And I went for the interview, loved it, met the CEO, and 2 months later, I was working there as the head of major gifts with Capital Appeal. That's where Beth and I met. And my role was to create a major donor function within the hospice, because that's traditionally where hospice income comes from, but also to scope and manage the private phase of the Capital Appeal. So we wanted to build a new building, which we're now in now, and we had to raise £6 million for that as part of a £22 million project. So I was in charge of the corporate trust and major gift landscape of raising part of that. Most of that 6 million, most of it came from the private side. We had about 4 years to do it. I worked with Beth for the first 12 to 18 months, which was great. She gave me lots of guidance on how to do a capital appeal. I'd never done one before, so that was very helpful. And through that, we use that as a catalyst to gain major donors into the hospice, some of whom were known to us, some of whom were new, some of whom we met through networking. And then we use that to also build up our corporate and trust base as well. We had some in fundraising in that, but it was very small. And now about £70,000 a year we were bringing in. Just had our figures back from the last financial year, and we're about £1.5 million now across those 3 areas. So we built that quite substantially over time. Obviously, there was a big growth when the Capital Appeal was in, so we raised £5 million of that 6 million through those 3 areas of corporate individuals and trusts. The other £1 million came from our public phase. And then from that, all of our donors luckily have stayed with us, and we've gained some more along the way. And yeah, that's kind of where we are now. So I've been here for 7.5 years now, mostly in head of major gifts role. A couple of years ago, I sort of went up to be the associate director, supporting our director. And then last October, I became the director.
So, well, yeah. Congratulations on that, on those moves. And so in terms of audience, hello, thank you for finding us here this afternoon. I apologise for the confusion. Our streaming service has cancelled its direct link to groups as of last week. So
very helpful.
We'll be working on a new service for next month. So Jane and I will chat about major donors for half an hour without being interrupted, without any problems at all. I've got lots of questions I want to ask her, and I'm sure she's got lots of knowledge she's happy to share. But if you have any questions for Jane, having just heard her potted history, or more generally anything to do with capital appeals and major donors, I will chip in and help if I can. Just write your comments underneath the live stream. I think I'm monitoring it in the right place on my phone, which is why I keep looking down here. So I should be able, we will answer your questions. That's the whole point of this, is for you guys to get involved and ask about anything that you want to ask about. But Jane, I want to, while people are thinking about their questions, go back to something you said, which is, talking about the donors moving from your capital appeal to your revenue with luck. And I would like to really challenge whether that is luck, because in my experience, donors don't stay because you're lucky. They stay because you have a really brilliant stewardship program. Did you consciously think about a different stewardship program as you transition from capital to revenue, or did you just keep going with the same as what you'd been doing already?
I don't think it was a conscious decision, but I was very aware that giving to a capital appeal and giving to revenue are two very different asks. Yeah. And I wanted to make sure we didn't lose any of that great work that we had done, and we had a big team with us when we were doing the capital appeal. And as I was saying to you before, we were live after that capital appeal, the team really dwindled down to a very small number, and we didn't want to lose all that fantastic work that everyone had done to build that momentum. Yeah. So stewardship was really, really high on my agenda, and we did lots of work to make sure those donors were on a journey with us. In the middle of all that was COVID and lockdown, which was quite complicated. So we had lots of exciting plans to, when we moved into the hospice, to show people around. We had done lots of tours when it was a building site, and we'd really gotten people engaged. But when we moved in, it was right in between lockdowns. So nobody was allowed in the hospice. We couldn't show anyone around. It was very quiet. So I remember organising an event with our chair and our CEO at the time, where we did a bit of a pre-video. We did a walk around, and then we had a live session where the two of them and I were sitting down, and we had all of our donors on Teams, and we'd sent some of our donors some champagne so that we could congratulate them and celebrate together, but also as an opportunity to ask lots of questions. So we had a lot of team meetings and Zoom meetings, and then once we opened up, we were allowed to show people around. That probably kept the stewardship quite healthy for quite a while, because I was still giving tours to people 2 years after we moved in, because that's how long it took to get everyone into the hospice, and showing people around after COVID had allowed us to bring people back in again. So yeah, it was a very conscious thing to make sure that stewardship was high on the agenda, and I think that really helped for them to continue that journey with us. And I think we've only maybe got one donor that said, "I'm capital appeal is my thing." Fine now, but everyone else has stayed with us and is still supporting us.
Yeah. So, and I remember in the very early days when I met with you and your boss and your chief exec talking about how this was the perfect catalyst for a major gift program. So it is fairly satisfying to hear that even in the modern market that is still true, if you do well. And one of my colleagues was revisiting capital appeal we did years ago at the Marlow Theatre in Canterbury, and they're going to be launching another capital appeal before too long, and their prospect list is all the same donors, because so many of them have stayed with the theatre all those years and have done revenue support for different arts programs and youth programs and helped keep the theatre open during COVID and things like that it's a pretty easy, she says easy, no capital appeal is easy, no fundraising is easy, but at least you're not starting from scratch with a new capital appeal, and whoever gets the job as campaign manager will have some really warm leads to go to. It's really interesting about Me and this colleague were talking, and for a moment it felt like I was back in 2007. It was really odd. I was like, oh my goodness, that's a long time ago.
It's repeating itself.
Yeah. So obviously COVID was a really odd time in terms of all fundraising, and a lot of your fundraising portfolio will have had to have halted. And I know that several charities did very successful emergency appeals to their major donors to help them. Did you feel, given that you'd literally just asked them for money for it to build a building, that you could do that, or did you keep
Absolutely.
open? Right.
No, we did. Yeah, we did. Our most successful appeal ever was our emergency appeal. So we were in the middle of our public fundraising for the capital appeal. We had a Grow Your Gardens campaign, which was meant to drop on people's doorsteps in March of 2020. And I think we pulled it the week that it was going out. So it still landed on a few doorsteps. But we decided, actually, people don't want to talk about gardens right now. It's not high on the agenda. But we did. It was a bit sad. I mean, it was very sad we didn't get to do it. But we had all the data, we had all the mailing house and everything ready. So we turned it around really quickly. And within 3 weeks, we put out an emergency appeal and we raised £600,000 from it, which we've never done with any appeal since then. And that was a mixture of individuals, corporates, trusts and major donors. But everyone responded in a really positive way. So we kind of used some of that money and we said, some of it will go towards our running costs to keep us going right now. And some of it will go towards our capital appeal. And everybody was really okay with that. So we did definitely do a second ask. And even after we'd moved into the hospice, those donors who had maybe given once or even twice during the emergency appeal, we went back to again and said, look, we're a bit short, we're not quite there yet. We've got 100,000 left. Can you help us out? And some people gave a third time. So I don't think you should ever shy away from asking your existing donors to do a bit of a top up, because a lot of them did come back and not as big a gift. Maybe if they'd given us, for example, we had a couple of people that gave us £100,000 during our capital appeal, which was huge amounts of money, and for that last bit gave us 5,000 or 10,000, and which is still a big amount of money, but smaller for them. But it enabled us to sort of hit that then target at the end. But nobody said to me, how dare you ask me again for more? They said, oh, you're so close, let us help you.
Yeah. And I think that's really important to remember, is that I think some of that unease about too frequent asking, too much asking, is very much from us as opposed to from anyone else. It's just, I've never had, so I'm always an advocate of going back to your donors to finish off your appeal. Like, I think you can probably get you can get your 1% done over the line with people doing top-up gifts. And particularly when you're talking about a 4-year appeal or longer than that, those people may have given that money 3 financial years ago and have probably started to build up their next reserve, and frankly, they are committed to your success as much as you are. And if it's an extra £1,500, an extra £5,000, whatever 1% of their original gift might be, they're going to do it, right? They're absolutely going to do it. So it's really interesting. So obviously COVID was a thing, and we've leapt from COVID straight into the cost of living crisis, which there was certainly a report out from Hospice UK, I think last week or the week before, about the funding gap for hospices being absolutely enormous. Absolutely.
£77 million this year.
It's just insanely huge. And you guys won't be immune to that. Hospices have got lights to keep on all year round and heating bills, significant heating bills. Let me just remind everyone, when you're ill, you don't move a lot, and therefore you need your room to be heated. How are you finding, and obviously the cost of living crisis outside of your own cost base is probably affecting your fundraisers, but how are you finding it in terms of your major donors? How are you finding they're reacting over the last year or two?
I think we've got probably 2 groups of donors. I think we've got those that have said, oh, I've given you a gift, I'm going to leave a little while, which is fine. And there are those that have said, you need us more than ever, we're going to come back and keep funding you. Great. So there's definitely 2 groups of donors. I'd say we're lucky at the moment. Again, we're lucky. We work hard to make sure we have more on the other side that says keep supporting you. So what we're doing at the moment is we're going back to our major donors and we're saying, rather than those big one-off gifts, would you start supporting us on a more... So a really great example is we have some amazing donor, a couple who have been supporting us for the last 3 years, actually not post the capital appeal. They came to us after the capital appeal and had a significant five-figure gift, which they always give in January, and they gave to us in January this year. And we met them and we spoke to them about the fact that we're now thinking about the next 3 years and actually beyond that to 2030, because that's a big turning point for hospices. That by 2030 we're going to be having the same demand on our services as we did during the first wave of COVID. So hospices are now ramping up to get ready for that point. The demand is going to be big. And we said what we really need is sustainable ongoing support. They've now set up a monthly standing order for us that's actually more than the gift they gave us in January for the next 3 years. So the annual gift they'll give us is a bit more than what they give us on a regular basis, on an annual basis, but it's coming in monthly now, and it's a bit more than it was. So that's the dream. That's what we want everyone to do. That's the first time we've done that with a donor, and it's worked, which has been great. We just need to make sure we try and do it with everyone. But that's what we want. What we're working towards is trying to get regular gifts that have meaning to them, rather than giving one gift every now and then.
Something I say to charities when I'm speaking to them about starting out, and there's a question we've got about starting out we'll come to in a second, is that actually all of the successful fundraising organisations have regular, dependable, unrestricted income. And, you know, that will predominantly, in terms of volume of donors, come from your individual giving donors. But actually, in terms of value of gift, if you can have your major donor sign up to that commitment, you think about the psychological idea of committing monthly, committing long term, committing regularly is such a brilliant connection between you and them that, you know, that really is the gold dust. So
because every time we contact them, they're not thinking, oh, they contact us because they want more money. Now when we contact them, it's because we want them to know about the next thing that's happening. We want them to tell about something exciting. It's not necessarily about asking for more money again. We know that money is coming in. So I think it is more positive for the relationship as well.
And I do think in that respect, major donor fundraisers who've never worked in individual giving fundraising can really learn from great individual giving teams, because individual giving teams will have regular content that goes out without asks to their regular donors. You know, I've got direct debits set up with a range of really tiny charities up to big ones, and the big ones send me milestones. You know, this hits the press, this is happening, we've managed to achieve X, Y, and Z. The little ones don't send me anything, which is absolutely also fine in case you're worrying about your direct debit. Anyone, I totally get the resource requirement of that. But, you know, individual giving teams, when you have a really flourishing IG program, are really good at regular comms that aren't always about asks. And I think that I often teach people that that's a great way to model your mid-value program, is to take that content, to take that unsung. And so you're not necessarily coming up with fresh content even. You know, you've got an IG team who are brilliant copywriters who are doing it. Just take their content, take a different slice of your database, personalize it a bit and send it out.
That's exactly what we do. We have a fantastic individual giving team and we use their content all the time. I was at an event last Friday and I talked about the case study that they're about to publish next week, and it worked. You know, they have great content, they do great things. So I'm a big believer in not reinventing the wheel and everyone having to do their own content. If you've got great content, use it across the team, use it in every way you can.
Absolutely, totally agree. Jo has asked us a question. She has joined a small but national charity as a fundraising manager. They have done no major donor fundraising up to now. And what would be the first few steps we would recommend? She's looking at previous donations plus what else?
So yeah, as you've said, the first thing to do is to scour your own database, because there's gems in there that you don't know about. I remember when I first started at Thames Hospice, we had a big metal filing cabinet that sat behind us, and there was lots of things in there that was like pre-database. And I actually sat down for a week and went through it and found a couple of gems in there, people that had given us money ages ago that we'd never talked to since, that we reconnected with, that ended up giving us quite substantial amounts. So you never quite know where it's going to come from. But scouring your database is your first important thing. Anyone that's given you, I guess, a single gift of anything, we look at anything over £500. Our mid-level gift team will then look at and go, okay, what can we do with them? And anything over £1,000, our major gifts team will then say, right, how can we connect with these people? What can we do to try and engage them? So I think that's your best starting point. And then networking, getting out there and talking to people, using your existing database to see who else they can talk to. So if you've got an event happening, getting your supporters to bring friends along.
Yeah.
Can they host something? We've done a few sessions where we've hosted something at someone's house, and we've said we will do all the logistics around having a dinner, but can you bring 3 or 4 friends along and just have a small dinner where we can come along and talk about the hospice? So networking is really important. If you have trustees as well, they should really be opening up their networks. And I know that's not always easy. We have had success stories and non-success stories here at the hospice as well. But, talk to them and find out who they know. And not just a sit down and who do you know, because people...
I don't know.
That question. But if you can be really specific, so what activities do you do? Do you go to the gym? Do you play golf? Who comes to the golf course with you? Who do you see there on a Saturday afternoon? If you can ask very specific questions, then it gets people thinking about it a bit more and opening up a little bit. So networking is a big thing. And then looking across other parts of your fundraising teams. We work really close with our community team. There are always people coming along to those events, and our community team will come to us and go, I met this person today. They live in this house, in this huge house somewhere, or they know this person, or they've done this before. And it's just thinking about what you can do to try and then network in. So there's lots of cross collaboration between our team, of people going, I met this person today, and that could be interesting. And then always putting your hand up to go and talk at events, because you never know, at a Rotary or a WI event, there's somebody in that room who could be a major donor themselves or networked into a major donor. And you having that conversation with them can get them thinking about things.
Absolutely. I do think that small national charities have a slightly harder time than regional charities, because you don't have that local connection and you're one person spread across the whole UK. Yeah. So I would say, obviously I don't know what it is, Jo, but if you have local groups that fundraise for you, or you have a concentration of donors in a certain area, it might be worth focusing your efforts in one key area. Yeah, you're very small, only 9 staff. So I worked for a charity like that years ago called the Haemophilia Society, and I set up their net has gone off. I'm back. That was odd. Anyway, I set up their community fundraising program at Haemophilia Society. On with my computer. I hope you can still hear me. I'm going to carry on. I'm one person working nationally. I'm back, am I?
Yeah, you're back.
So local groups are fundraising themselves, Jo. That's exactly what I was going to say. Is I had 17 local groups across the UK. They were fundraising for their local services. But what I was able to do was get into those groups and start chatting and find different income streams that correlated with those geographic areas. So for me at the time, it was corporate, but I was able to map where those groups were. So one group happened to be in Bristol, and Bristol has got quite a lot of industry and quite a lot of philanthropists in it, and able to work with the local group so that it didn't feel like I was treading on their toes for the money they were raising for themselves. And in fact, even though I was a national fundraiser, I went down there, I attended raffle ticket evenings, I tore my raffle tickets, I sold my things, I did the absolute grassroots work to win their support. From that, they were then willing to help me connect into corporates and philanthropists, which they weren't interested in doing for themselves. So it might be worth exploring that as an avenue. Yeah, and I think it can be very easy. Those groups can feel quite combative of national staff. You come and go, we are here forever is a refrain I have heard many, many times over. And particularly if it's like a health thing and they're living with the health thing and you're going to be in that organisation for 3 to 5 years and then you're going to leave, they've probably seen lots of people like you come and go over the years. So building that trust. So started doing the local group stuff, yes, but we'll also focus on their own relationships. That's great. A really practical thing if you're starting out is please make sure your privacy policy is all right. So you have to cover, if you're going to do researching people and holding data on the database, mapping, I do apologise about my internet, I have no idea what's going on, then please do make sure your privacy policy allows you to do that. The best free place I can think of to look is Prospecting for Gold, who are the wealth screening.
Let's say that, right? Yes.
They do loads of free advice on privacy policies and stuff. So wealth screening.
Got loads of great webinars on there. Yeah, you can go and have a listen to things they've done. And if you have the money, they will do a wealth screen for you so that you know what's on your database. That doesn't cost you anything. And then you can choose what information you want to get from them. And then obviously whether you have budget or not as to how much you get. But the guys there are really helpful and brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant. And I think, you know, the really key part of what I heard you say, Jane, is the network mapping and the asking people who they know, is to not just go, so who do you know? And I think that's a trap we fall into, is that because you and I know how to do the job, we aren't that granular often when we give that advice. And I thought what you said was really specific, you know, who goes to your golf club, who's an alumni of the same thing. And you can either just ask them cold that, and obviously you won't know who goes to their golf club. That's unlikely to be public knowledge, so you definitely have to ask them that. But you can do some basic background research on your trustee or whoever it is you're network mapping with. You can check them out on LinkedIn. Where did they go to university? What year did they go? Are they trustee anywhere? Did they used to work at a particularly cool firm? You know, and then say, can you think of any connections from your time at Deloitte? Or are you in touch with any of your alumni from Cambridge? You know, and ask them more specific questions, because the question, who do you know, will panic people. That's all it is. It's blind panic. And they go, I don't know any rich people. I don't know. It's all awful. Whereas if you say, who are you still in touch with who was alumni at Cambridge with you, then they can think more about specific people and be quite helpful. And I also find that everyone
have coffee with anyone
healthy. So I've had so many occasions like, oh no, there's no point talking to them. They don't have any money. And then you're like, he was the chairman of Abbey National. Was he? Was he? Like, very much so. So yeah, I mean that's our advice, Joe. I hope that is helpful, kind of starting point for you. We have been on for
it takes time.
Sorry, Jane, carry on.
I was going to say that it's not instant. It takes time.
Yeah.
You know, it does, and it can take a long time. You know, we had one donor that we were working on for years and years and years, and we thought had gone completely cold. And then it was about 5 years later they contacted us and gave us some money. And you just got to keep plugging away, even though it feels like you're not getting anywhere. It is going somewhere, but it takes a long time.
And that can be really hard to justify when you're limited on time as well, you know, and there can be a tendency to just go, well, just ask, you're not getting anywhere. So just ask, where's the risk in it? And it is a real delicate balancing act. Jane, I've just grandly said we'll be on till 15:15, so I hope you're all right with that.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
We've got a new question.
Lovely.
Great. Which Kathleen is asking, have we got any advice on launching a patron scheme?
Oh, I don't have great advice, because I've tried to do it a couple of times and not done a very good job of it. So when we were running our capital appeal, we had different levels of donors, and those that gave at the highest level, which at the time was £100,000, because we were running a big capital appeal, we called our patrons. There wasn't really a scheme as such, because at that level you're being very personalised. And then after the capital appeal, I thought, right, I'm gonna start a giving club. That this is the way I'm going to do it. I can't remember what we were going to call it now. And I tried, but those people that had given at those big levels weren't really very interested in being part of club. So since then, I've thought I would love to start a kind of I don't know what you call it, kind of a lower level major donor club, which is kind of like £5,000 to £10,000. And I've got lots of ideas and plans for it, but I've never really got it off the ground. And just to explain to people that as of until October last year, I was running the major donor program on my own, along with corporate and for a little while trusts, until we had a brilliant trust fundraiser come to us, and then for a little while legacies, until we had a legacy person from the team come across and support us. So I was running a lot of things on my own. So I had lots of ideas of things I wanted to do, but didn't really get them off the ground. We now have a brilliant major gifts team, which I'm very excited about. And one of the things we are talking about is a patrons club. I hope they don't mind the shout out, but there's a hospice, East Cheshire Hospice, who have a brilliant patrons club who they call Angels. And it's asking people to sign up for, I think, either £5,000 or £10,000 a year for 3 years. And they have network and they have regular meetings. And they've got they started about 8 years ago, and they've got about 80 people in their group at the moment, and they ask everyone when they join to then host an event, to get their friends involved, and it's just grown and grown and grown, and they are a brilliant example of how a Patrons Club can work really, really well. So that's kind of what I would love to do. So we've got plans to start our own Patrons Club, but we've just never really got off the ground. We do have a mid-level giving club, which we launched about 5 years ago, which is £1,000 a year, and that's, again, it's grown very organically and slowly over the last few years, but we now have one of our 3 philanthropy teams is focused on mid-level gifts, and she's reinvigorating, and she had her first event last week, which we called Seeing as Believing, which I love, which inviting people into the hospice to see the hospice and see the work that was happening. And Nick, our medical director, spoke, and I spoke about the money bit, and we had about 80 people in the room, and I think 5 or 6 of them have signed up, which was brilliant. So she's really reinvigorating that and getting that off the ground now. So as much as we've got quite a well-developed high-level giving program, that sort of in-between bit is still in its infancy with us.
That's really cool. So I would say advice about patron scheme. So we run lots of donor interviews. We do lots of feasibility studies for charities and stuff. And so we get lots of donor interviews, and it's a common thing we are asked to explore with donors and potential donors across the sector. And from my memory, it's one of those more memorable statistics actually, is that like roughly 50-50 on the love it or hate it. But what's interesting when we speak to donors is everybody has a strong opinion about a giving club. It isn't one of those things like, yeah, I don't mind so much, maybe not. People either are like, totally, you need a giving scheme, this is how it's going to work, this is the only way I will give, do this, I'll bring my friends, do the rest of it. Or, oh my God, no, if you make me join that, I will give my money to someone else. It's really polarizing. And on that basis, I think that it's got to be set up if you've got the right donors who are minded to do that donor get donor event stuff. And so otherwise,
I don't think our donors are in that space at the moment, but what we want to do now is create a new set of donors who are in that space.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And if you have it, it will attract those who like it. That's the one good thing I would say. But you shouldn't necessarily try and shoehorn your existing donors into a club if they're giving very happily without being a member. I mean, offer, but don't make it compulsory. And where I've seen it not work is where giving schemes are the way that fundraising will work in this space for an organisation. We have decided that giving schemes feel like a really streamlined, efficient way to corral our donors into key groups, and we will give these benefits to these 3 levels, and you will fit in a level. And if you don't like that, basically don't give to our charity. That is not a good way of doing it, and I genuinely have seen that. I spoke to a charity earlier this year who wanted my consultancy advice on doing that, and I was like, no, I will speak to your donors and find out what they would like, if you like, but it's unlikely to uniformly be that. So I think it has great value, and if you build it, you will attract people who want to get in it. But again, going back to that, it's time, and it's about where is your investment usefully spent, I guess. It sounds to me, Jane, like you're ready for those things and you've got a really sophisticated program. I wouldn't necessarily advise someone newer in their development phase of major donor fundraising to spend a lot of effort building a scheme unless you've been told by a key donor this is how they will maximize their income. Personally,
I think what you want to do is spend your time building relationships with individuals, which is why it does take time, because you'll get the bigger rewards that way. And then in part of those conversations, then you can talk to people about whether they'd be interested in being part of a network. But you'll probably find that a lot of our donors.
Yeah. I'm hoping you can still hear.
Oh, we got kicked out and we're back again.
Yes, we got kicked out and then we're back again. So I lost you right at the beginning of that. You find a lot of our donors and then you went. So
a lot of our donors. I can't remember what I said now. I've lost my train of thought. Yes, spend your time talking to individuals, and as part of those conversations, that's what I was saying. A lot of our donors have their own networks already, so they don't need more networks. They don't need to be introduced to people because they they know what they're doing, and they will.
Yeah. And donating, Jane has totally gone. Donating needn't be synonymous with having to join a club. I'm gonna, unless there are any more questions, and I have been keeping an eye on the group and I can't see any more now, I'm gonna say that's a wrap for today. We've done about 40 minutes, so hopefully we've answered the questions you want us to answer. I will be live again next month, and I will work out how to stream in a more efficient way that doesn't mean we start late and end late. But if you've got any questions, do drop them under the advert for in the event for next month's chat in advance, and we can prime those, or do come and join us live if you can. And I'll be promoting the date for that really shortly. I've just had a message from the person who's going to be joining us live, and I need to fix the date with him and sort that out. But thank you so much for those of you who've persevered with the tech and the whatever issues today. I really appreciate it. Jane is just back now in time for me to say, Jane, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time today, and bye-bye, really. And I will come and meet you on an offline platform so we can say our goodbyes properly. But just to end the stream there, thank you. Bye, everyone.